I gotta show you something. Ready for this? Look at this shirt. This is my favorite shirt that I own right now. I don't know why it makes me laugh, but it makes me laugh. In case you can't see in the camera, this is Pluto over here. Pluto getting kicked off the Newton's cradle with the rest of the planets. He no longer gets to play with the planets. Anyway, I like it. Moving on. So today we're going to talk about the Safety Act in Illinois. The Purge is coming to Illinois. There's lots of people out there hyping up this Safety Act. Pardon me, cell phone going off. There's lots of people hyping up this Safety Act. Safe-T, by the way, in case you want to look it up, in Illinois, because it gets rid of the cash bail system, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about people there's a lot of misinformation that says that people will be let out of jail for like murder and kidnapping and all that stuff. That's just not true. It's just not. It's all lies. What it does is it reforms the cash bail system in Illinois, which is a real problem in this country. So let's go over the basics of the way cash bail works. So when you get accused of a crime and arrested, you'll go to whatever local jail they keep you in until it's time for your trial, or you can pay the court system whatever fairly arbitrary amount of money they decide to tell you owe them to get out of jail until your actual trial. So cash bail sets up a system where if you're really poor and you get arrested for something fairly innocuous, fairly minor, that's not really too big a deal, but it requires you to be detained and requires you to go through a criminal trial. Well, they can just very arbitrarily just be like, hey, give us $20,000 or you get to sit and rot for 4 months in jail while we wait for your trial date to show up. And this is awful because we're supposed to live in a society where you're innocent until proven guilty. How does it make freaking sense for the only way for innocent to be proven guilty to actually happen is if you have enough money to pay to get out? It's stupid. It penalizes you for being poor. Granted, penalizing people for being poor in the United States is that's like 101 U.S. policy. If you're poor, get fucked. So the Safety Act in Illinois is the first act in the country to try to address this issue, and it addresses it by just bailing on cash bail entirely. It's getting a lot of pushback from law enforcement, of course. They don't like anything that they would deem is pulling some power away from them. God forbid they have to release somebody out of their custody when they could instead just leave them there to rot for months at a time and barely feed them. I live in Ohio. Ohio doesn't have a particularly stellar reputation for taking care of people who are in just like your county jails temporarily waiting trial. I have no idea what the prisons are like, I'm going to be honest with you, but I know the local jail near where I live is fucking terrible. Like one of the worst jails in the country. So anyway, I can hear my fiance listening to the stream in the other room. It was making me laugh. I was like, where's this echo coming from? Anyway, so the Safety Act is getting a lot of bad information put out there about it against it. It's claiming that it does a lot of things that it doesn't do, up to and including um, making the purge legal in Illinois. Like, you're just going to be able to go around and off people and then just go free till your trial. It's like, it's nonsense. Like, who would think that that was okay? Who would think that even if there was like a legislator somewhere that really thought that, like, yes, a murderer should be set free until trial, like, they're not going to do it. Like, there's so many other people out there that would be like, you're fucking weird. Like, get off whatever it is you're smoking. We're not going to let an accused murderer out on bail until the trial. Like, what? So anytime you hear something that's inflammatory like that, where it's like, oh, the purge is coming to Illinois, or they're going to let murderers run amok in the street, or somebody's going to be able to like break and enter into your house and then get caught and then just walk free the next day. Like, there's always something more, and this is the case here. So let's go over to my first couple of slides I have here, and give me a second. There we go. So, downsides of only having one screen. Eventually, I'll get another one. Anyway, so this is the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. This is an official page from the Illinois, the Illinois government. So this is not some random website that's putting their spin on it. This is just a breakdown of what the law is supposed to do. It's a pretty extensive breakdown, so we're only going to cover parts of it. Also, the bill's like 850 pages long, so like I kind of skimmed some stuff to try to like pull some of the more relevant things out of it, but I'm not reading a 900 page law for a stream that's going to get me and maybe one or two other people watching it. Like, if you guys are curious, you can look it up. But we'll go over the things that the Illinois government says that it does. So we'll start off with changes to what the police can get away with use of force. So it has an entirely new set of standards. They're not it's not crazy updated. It's not like, if you're in a high-speed car chase with a guy, you're not allowed to tackle him if he gets out of his car. Like, that's still fair. It's the limits, the upper limits have been adjusted. So you're not allowed to like beat the shit out of somebody who's not resisting. You're not allowed to shoot somebody who's not resisting with a deadly weapon. Actually, it doesn't say deadly weapon. I should say that I think you shouldn't be able to shoot somebody if they're not resisting with a deadly weapon. But in this case, it's still kind of gray on that one. Like as is the case with all these laws that try to address use of force with police. It's like, it's vaguely written, which, leaves room for the police to do some things that they probably shouldn't do. But at the same time, it's like, you can't write a law that encompasses every situation perfectly. So a little bit of vagueness is just going to have to be baked in, because there's too many interactions people can get into with each other for you to predict all of them and have them written in law. So, of course, there's going to be a little bit of vagueness. Usually the vagueness is written in such a way that it gives the police a little more latitude than the civilians, but better is better. It's not perfect, but better is better. So take a win. So it says it requires police officers to provide aid after using force. This is a big one, because there's been a lot of instances of police brutality where, the officers shoot a person, and then while that person is laying on the ground bleeding out, they put them in handcuffs and then just walk away. Like, no, you don't do that. Like, don't even put the, like, why are you even putting him in handcuffs? You just shot the guy. Get the damn ambulance there. Like, at minimum, most of those instances, the police officer has already fucked up by the time they pull the trigger. But now you're adding insult to injury. It's like you shoot the guy and then you just leave him there. It's like, what is he target practice? Like, is this guy just a target to you? Like, what the hell? So, requiring them to provide aid is not going to really solve police brutality, but hopefully it saves some lives. And this one's big too. It requires police officers to intervene if other officers use unauthorized or excessive force. Now, obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a gray area with this, but if it's an open and shut case and all the other cops around the cop doing the excessive force are not doing anything, they also get in trouble. That was the big thing with the George Floyd case, was like the other cops that were there didn't physically commit the act of violence that resulted in George Floyd's death, but they didn't stop it, and they could have. Given the fact that they were all armed and nobody else around them was, they were the only ones that could stop it, and they didn't. And that's why everybody in that situation got in trouble. But there was some rule bending that needed to take place. There were some creative interpretations of some laws that had to happen to get those other people held accountable for not doing anything, because it was not specifically written into the law that police officers have to intervene in other police officers doing shitty things. So that's a big one. Prohibits police access to any military equipment surplus program or purchasing specific types of equipment. So in case you didn't know, if you ever see like SWAT teams from the police running around in like military spec vehicles, obviously they don't have tanks, but they're going to have like armored troop carriers, and they're going to have like combat zone levels of body armor and like assault rifles, and not assault rifles that you can buy at like a local gun show. I mean assault rifles. Like, these are like military issue assault rifles, and the police can just get them because in America we build more military equipment than we actually need, like vast amounts more. In fact, I want to pull up a picture, a couple pictures, just to put this into perspective, because it's actually interesting how much, make sure I get the right ones, how many vehicles the United States builds that we just don't use. It's absolutely bizarre. So here we go. Here's this one here. This picture right here. Look at all those rows of tanks. Just tons of them. Just like thousands of tanks just sitting there not being used. Here we go. Just all this stuff. All these tanks. We built these tanks with no intention of using them. The only reason we built them is because the United States decided to buy tanks from a tank manufacturer to keep the tank manufacturer in business, with no intention of actually using the tanks. Some of them will sell. Some of them will just sit there. Most of them will sit there. But the ones that don't have the military, the catastrophic guns on them, imagine the damage a rogue police officer could do with a tank if they were allowed to actually like get armament for it. So the troop transports are the ones that let's see if we can get that up. The troop transports are the ones that the police are allowed to get. Now we'll just Google it. We'll just Google military police vehicle. Okay, so this one right here. Right here. Look at this. This is a heavily armored vehicle. There is no reason. Apparently that button doesn't do what I thought it did. Shows how often I use a actual PC. Anyway, this vehicle right here is a legit armored military vehicle. This thing will take like RPGs and survive. And the police have it to deal with Frank down the street. Why? Why do they need these? And the answer is they don't need them. So then the question becomes, how do they get their hands on them if they don't need them? Well, it's because the United States has a military surplus program where if they build a vehicle that is allowed to be used by police by I don't know if it's federal law or military rules. I'm not sure where the rules come from for what the police can and cannot get their hands on. But if it's a surplus vehicle that is not intended to be used in military combat, and the police want it, and the police are allowed to have it, they can just get it. They don't have to buy it. They just get it. Because we build too many of them. So we give them to the police, and then the police end up being, mini armies instead of police. Police are supposed to be there to serve and protect. They're supposed to be there to keep the peace. They're supposed to be there to maintain a semblance of a cohesive, functioning society, and instead we're giving them freaking armored vehicles for some unknown freaking reason. Like, SWAT doesn't need that. I can't think of one instance outside of maybe two, where a SWAT team would need a vehicle like that. And just for reference for the excess that the United States military has. Look at these. Look at all these planes. All these bombers, fighter jets, recon aircraft, just sitting in the desert. Not being used. Just rotting away. Like, most of these didn't even see combat. Look at that. Graveyard House is almost 4,000 aircraft. 4,000 aircraft. Most of those didn't see combat. Most of them are, post the end of the Korean War. It's like maybe you used them in Vietnam and Desert Storm, but mostly we just build them and then just for shits and giggles, essentially, just to burn that military budget money. So anyway, so it's good that police cannot get military equipment from the surplus program, because why do they need it? There's no reason. And but the stuff that they are allowed to get, so the stuff that they are allowed to get, I'm sure there will be instances where they'll be getting like combat shotguns. You would need that in a SWAT situation potentially, or certain rifles, or also in SWAT situations you're going to need like pretty heavy body armor, or if you have to like defuse a bomb, you're going to need some pretty heavy body armor. And the only people that make that stuff are military contractors. So there are some military equipment that the police would need some amount of to do their job in extreme situations. But they don't need a freaking troop transport. Like, that's unnecessary. So it's good that this like prohibits the amount of militarization that the police can get, because they're not a military, they're the police. The military gets a lot more training than the police do, which is why they're allowed to have cool toys. Anyway, so they have to give like receipts for for any military equipment that they buy. Uh, they have to expand the use, or they have expands the use and changes the guidelines and requirements for body cameras. So there, in there, there's a provision where the police departments can get a little bit of money for um, maintaining the body cam footage and making it available to the public under the guidelines that this law puts in place. So they can't just randomly decide to delete body cam footage. It needs to be available to be used in the criminal justice system or handed over to reporters, whatever it is. It needs to be available, or otherwise they get funding pulled. So it includes crisis intervention training for officers, and also probation officers and non dedicated police staff that would come into contact with a potentially dangerous person. They're also required to have training on crisis intervention, de-escalation, all that stuff. Now, these training courses have had like mixed results. Honestly, you can pass the class, but there's a lot of cops out there. I shouldn't say a lot. I don't actually know what the ratio is between like cops who act this way and cops who don't act this way. We all know there's too many cops that act the wrong way, but what actual ratio it is, I'm not sure. But there's a lot of cops out there that, they'll take this training, they'll pass this class, and then when the situation arises, they're like, yes, I get to beat somebody's face in, and they're like excited about it. And so there's varying effectiveness of this, and the law sets up a fully fledged out system for anonymous police complaints. So if the police do something terrible, or something out of character, or even just something shitty, just like poor conduct, not necessarily illegal, but just the cops being an asshole for no reason, there's a complaint system to deal with that, and the complaints will be registered anonymously, so you won't get any sort of like any a backlash from the police department, or backlash from people who support the police department if they could look up your name. Sneeze coming in potentially. Nope, it's just gonna go away and come back later. Thank you very much. So the complaints and misconduct section sets up a system for people to file anonymous complaints. So that's good. And and then just more provisions. These ones all down here are just changes to the way that like paperwork flows through, and the way that police have to file their paperwork. So it's not super important for our everyday life. It's more clerical stuff. So this is the one that everybody's freaking out about, is the pre-trial highlights. So it abolishes cash bail. It prevents the results of a risk assessment from being the sole basis for a detention decision, and informs the accused person of the tools. So they have developed a new sheet of paperwork, essentially, that the risk assessment, meaning when a person goes into jail after they've been arrested, a risk assessment will be done to determine if they are flight risk, if they're a danger to themselves, if they're a danger to the community around them, and if it is deemed such that they are a risk by this risk assessment. Under the old system, that was it. You were not allowed out, period. That risk assessment was all that was required. And so this new sheet of paperwork that they've come up with is a way for the accused to basically appeal that decision. Be like, hey, I'm not a flight risk. I promise I will come back. Here's where I'll be. Here, there's like this list of requirements that could override the risk assessment, provided the information given on the paperwork met the requirements to override the risk assessment. It's not. I couldn't find the actual sheet because, again, not reading an 800-page law, but that's essentially what it does. And let's see. It adjusts the guidelines for which laws will prevent you from being, or which crimes will prevent you from being let out on bail. So before, if you were if you were like um, accused of domestic violence, you could just pay your cash bail and then just get out, and it usually wasn't that much if they even kept you at all on bail. Whereas now there's new regulations that are stricter on letting people out on domestic violence. So if you know a man beats the piss out of his wife, he's not walking home 6 hours later. So that's good, and then it changes the language in the laws to determine who gets let out, why they get let out, and then under what circumstances are they let out? Are they let out just like under like with no restrictions and just be like, hey, come back for trial in 3 months? Are they let out on with electronic monitoring? Do they get an ankle bracelet? Are they confined to their home? All these things are up for grabs in this new system. And this is where the bad information is coming from, where they're assuming that since cash bail is being abolished, you won't be able to pay your way out of jail, which is good for poor people. That you're going to have somebody like murder somebody on the street and then get let out. And that's not what happens. That's not how it works. If you are a danger, and murderers tend to be dangerous, you will not be let out on bail, and you won't be able to post a cash bail either. So this was another issue with the old cash bail system, is if a rich guy did something really shitty and they were like $500,000 cash bail, he's like, cool, wrote a check, get out. Didn't really matter what he did, except under extreme circumstances. You could torch a car right in the middle of town, set 2 buildings on fire, and like damage a bunch of people's property with that arson that you did. And if you were a rich little shithead, 18, 19-year-old kid in college, and your rich daddy was willing to write that check to get you out, you could get out and then go about your merry way. Yes, you'd have to come back for trial, but during the time in between your arrest and when your trial was, you could just go and do whatever the hell you wanted. Commit more arson if you wanted. It's not advisable. It makes your case worse, but you could. Whereas like a poor person would be stuck there. And, they wouldn't be able to set up any potential, getting their finances in order to like help take care of their family. They couldn't work out some kind of deal with like landlords and stuff to like, hey, I got to go back for trial. I may get convicted. Please don't kick out my wife. All that stuff is taken care of when you're rich, but it's already hard in the United States without being stuck in jail. With the cash bail system, you're guaranteed to be stuck in jail and trying to figure all that stuff out. So it's good, given the fact that most of the crimes people get arrested for are pretty benign, all things considered. Maybe some drug offenses, maybe they broke into somebody's car. Again, none of this stuff is good, but it doesn't make them dangerous, and it doesn't mean they won't show up for trial. And there's steps that you can take where you can guarantee that they show up for trial even if they get out of prison. Like you can you can confine them to their home. You can put on an ankle bracelet. You can have them under 24-hour monitoring. It's like there's stuff that you can do. So there's no reason to keep them in jail if they don't pose a danger to themselves or the community around them. So that's what this does. It doesn't let people out, or it doesn't let bad people out of jail. It just lets people who are awaiting trial out on bail without having to pay for it, provided they aren't a danger to themselves or their community or flight risk. And that's it. That's all it really does. There's a bunch of other stuff in there that, reorganize what the police are allowed to buy, what the police have to do. They gotta wear body cams. They can't do, excessive violence and all that stuff. But all of that stuff is fairly popular with the public. So in order to try to get the whole thing shot down, which most of this is already in effect, it's just the cash bail system that's going away on January 1st, 2023. To get the rest of that stuff removed, to maintain the system the way that it is, they had to find something to latch onto in the public eye to turn sentiment against it. And what they did was they pretended that the Purge is coming to Illinois. Like that, what? That's ridiculously disingenuous. There's no reason for it. So, if somebody tells you that the Safety Act is bad, or you see an article on on how it's going to let criminals out of prison, that's not what it does. That's not what it's meant to do. That's not what it's designed to do. And just in case something does happen unexpected, like the law is written in such a way that it doesn't do what it's intended to do, there's a review board that is constantly going to monitor what happens in Illinois after this passes, and then they're going to make adjustments up to and including bringing back the cash bail system. Now, that would be like the nuclear option. And given the United States' track record with screwing over people who don't have money, that may end up being the ultimate goal. Is this was like a handout to the people, something that they wanted, getting rid of the cash bail system, when in reality the intention is to screw it up and then take it away. It's happened in the past. That's conspiratorial. I don't particularly think that's what's going on here, but I wouldn't be honest if I didn't bring it up. So I'd be leaving out some relevant information. So now